Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. And in today's video I want to talk about things that I don't miss now that I've left behind evangelical fundamentalist Christianity. In my previous video I talked about things that I do miss, that I'm sad to have left behind, and so now let's talk about the things that I'm glad to be rid of. And the first thing that I'm glad to have left behind is what I call the helmet. For 2.5 decades, I wore a metaphorical helmet. It surrounded my ears, it surrounded my eyes, it surrounded my mouth, and it surrounded my brain. And every thought that I had, every word that I spoke, every sound that I heard, every thing that I saw, I felt compelled to evaluate through the lens of, or through the filter, I should say, of God. What would God think of this? Am I honoring God by saying this, watching this, doing this, thinking this? TV shows that I watched, I had to run them through the filter of whether or not these honored God. There were always Christians who were eager to tell me that they don't, and that I shouldn't watch them. And as such, I felt a lot of guilt about watching Beavis and Butthead or South Park or what have you. Secular music. My denomination didn't take a hard stance on secular music. It was basically, evaluate it for yourself, and if you feel like you can listen to it without it affecting your walk, and without it putting up a stumbling block, quote unquote, to other Christians, go for it. Still, I felt guilt about listening to Iron Maiden or Metallica back in those days, because so many Christians believed that it didn't honor God. Even as an adult, I had to put the things that I watched and listened to through the filter of whether or not it honored God. And a lot of times I landed on, going ahead and watching them or experiencing them or whatever, despite the fact that, other Christians so strongly believed that I shouldn't. And I did feel a lot of guilt about that. Guilt is one of those things that a lot of former Christians of all stripes deal with a lot. And a few videos from now, when I get into purity culture and how it affected me, we're going to talk a lot about guilt. But anyway, so that was the helmet. That was this constant having to evaluate everything as it relates to my relationship with God. And it required constant diligence, and truthfully it was really exhausting, and I am glad to be rid of it. The next thing I want to talk about is what I call the genetic fallacy. And the genetic fallacy is a logical fallacy where you evaluate something based on its origins. Wikipedia gives the example of people oppose wedding rings because wedding rings originated in the tradition of treating women like property to be bought and sold. And of course, you can evaluate a wedding ring, and you should evaluate a wedding ring not based on its origins, but it's based on its value to you and your partner. If your partner wants a wedding ring and values that and you're fine with that, get a wedding ring, Christians, however, love, particularly evangelical Christians, love their genetic fallacy, and they love leaning into it. You shouldn't practice yoga because it's a spiritual practice that originated in India by Hindus. I've known American Christians who are staunchly opposed to the metric system, of all things, because the metric system originated in the French Revolution, and the French Revolution was anti-Christian. I think the real reason so many American Christians oppose the metric system is because of their belief in American exceptionalism, but we'll get to that later in this video. But anyway, Christians like to pick and choose where they'll apply the genetic fallacy. Like they'll say, oh, you shouldn't practice yoga because its origins are in this pagan practice. Well, you know what else originated with Hindus in India? Arabic numerals. We call them Arabic numerals because they were popularized by Arab mathematicians, but they originated in India. On the subject of Arabic numerals, you might as well stop practicing algebra, because algebra is literally an Arabic word, and it originated by Muslim scholars in Arabia. You know, Christians still practice algebra, I'm assuming. Chess. Chess originated in ancient India by Hindus. Christians still play chess. Now, before you come at me in the comments, I know that a lot of liberals like to use the genetic fallacy too. A lot of liberals oppose policing in America in the form that it's in today because it originated in slave catchers and bounty hunters. I oppose policing in America in the form that it exists today because it's systemically racist, not because it has anything to do with its origins in slave catching. And, if you're a liberal and you believe in the genetic fallacy, then you should probably stop driving a Ford, because Henry Ford was a virulent anti-Semite. Which leads me to my next point, which is axe grinding. Christians love having axes to grind. In Christianity, the two biggest were the King James only controversy and the tongues speaking controversy. Now, in my own denomination, we weren't King James only by any stretch of the imagination at all. And we eschewed speaking in tongues. But a lot of Christians really hang their hat on one or the other, or even both of these issues, and will go to great lengths to, grind these axes with other Christians, trying to convince Christians, oh, you need to adopt the King James only because of this or that, or you need to, speak in tongues because of this or that. And it's not limited to evangelicals. I've known Greek Orthodox Christians who will lecture you for hours about how you're doing communion wrong because you call it communion and not the Eucharist. And then also within evangelical Christianity, there's how the quote-unquote tribulation is going to pan out. Are you pre-trib? Are you post-trib? Are you premillennial? Are you post-millennial? Even if I still believed in evangelical Christianity, I wouldn't have any truck with any of that nonsense, because that's what it is. It's nonsense. It doesn't matter. If you're a Christian, it doesn't matter because it has no effect on your salvation. It has no effect on your daily life. And if you're not a Christian, it doesn't matter because it doesn't matter. It's all fiction. And the last thing I am glad to be rid of is conservative politics. Now, as I've said before, my denomination was not overtly political. Politicizing from the pulpit just wasn't done. I mean, it may be done in some congregations in my denomination, but, in Bible college, I was taught that that's really bad form, and it shouldn't be done, and it elevates politics over Christ. And a couple of friends of mine who are ministers in my former denomination have said the same thing to me. Regardless of their personal beliefs, they're not going to politicize from the pulpit. Now, that doesn't mean that my denomination wasn't political in some ways. We were strongly anti-abortion, and we were strongly anti-pornography. But again, you weren't going to hear from the pulpit, a preacher telling you how to vote, or because this politician, wants to tighten the rules on pornography, you need to go vote for him. That just wasn't done. But evangelical Christianity as a whole has hitched its wagon to the Republican Party. And libraries worth of books have been written about why. I'm not going to get into the why of that. I'm not even qualified to begin to explain it. But evangelical Christianity, and I was a part of evangelical Christianity, is strongly conservative. I would say that 90% of the people in the pews in my denomination vote Republican. And when I deconstructed from being an evangelical Christian, I also deconstructed from being a conservative Republican. Once I started to realize that things that I had held dear for so many years, like, the creation narrative in the Bible and all that, after I started questioning whether or not those things that I had turned a blind, or after I'd started taking a critical look at, things that I had in the past turned a blind eye to, my conservative political beliefs started falling apart too. I realized that climate change is real. I realized that systemic racism is real. I realized that wealth inequality is real. I realized that denying people health care because they can't afford it is criminal and wrong. And so these days I'm definitely politically liberal, absolutely, and so many conservative evangelicals, hitch their wagon to the Republicans. Trump, for whatever it's worth, shook things up in the evangelical right, to be certain. And I can't say specifically how many people in my former denomination went all in on Trump, because I'm not a part of that denomination anymore. The ministers from my former denomination that I've known will tell you in private that they can't stand the guy, but in public they kind of keep that to themselves, because again, politicizing in my denomination was kind of considered bad form. Of the people in my denomination that I knew who weren't ministers, and to include my family, it's been a mixed bag. Fortunately, my family didn't hitch its wagon to Trump. None of them can stand the guy. A few friends of mine who are still in that denomination have unfriended me on Facebook because I didn't support Trump. A few others realize what a jerk he is. Whether or not that's pushed them to the left is not mine to say. But for me, I've been pushed to the left. It happened before Trump, but Trump just made it clear to me that I made the right decision in abandoning the left, or in abandoning the Christian right. So those are the things that I don't miss about being a Christian. I hope this video has been informative. I apologize for the kind of haphazard presentation. I am doing my best here. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe. And you can come at me in the comments if you'd like. As I've said before, I'm not going to proselytize or debate, but I do appreciate the comments. I enjoy reading your thoughts. It helps feed the algorithm. And I look forward to talking to you again. Thank you.